All right, it's lesson 108. I really like this lesson. We really get to get into a lot of detailed stuff, really get to get into the code book here pretty deep. We're going to be talking about dwelling unit circuit requirements. So really what we're going to get into is where do we have to put our receptacles, how many, how far apart, all that kind of stuff for various areas of a dwelling unit here. So again, this is really heavy in the code in the NEC, so let's actually go ahead and pull that up. So everything we're going to deal with here in this video, in this lesson, comes out of Article 210.52. Okay, and first thing to notice is and you might want to follow along in your code book, but first thing is the title of this article: Dwelling Unit Receptacle Outlets. Dwelling unit, that's a key one. We're talking about residential buildings here, houses. So none of these things are going to necessarily apply to any commercial buildings. These are strictly dwelling unit related code. So keep that in mind. You're going to see a lot of trick questions in the homework and the worksheets asking about a school or a restaurant. This stuff from 210.52 does not apply there. Okay. So anyway, there's a lot of subsections here. So 210.52a is general provisions. And then a subsection of that, we have spacing, wall space, floor receptacles, countertops, similar work areas. And I'll try to cycle through this here. Obviously, you guys can read it, but your small appliances is B. C is going to be your countertop and work surfaces. By the way, small appliance section, that basically means kitchen countertop. Okay, so anyway, we have some subsections there. D, we hit into bathrooms. 210.52E is going to be outdoor outlets. And then 210.52F is laundry areas. Then we have basements, garages, and accessory buildings. Moving on to hallways, 210.52H. And lastly, 210.52I is foyers, or your entryways, right? So there's a couple of these we're not going to hit on. I don't want to do anything with kitchens here at this point. That's going to come at a later time. So we're rolling all these guys out. So anything number 4 under section A, all of section B and C. We're going to talk about that later. We're not worried about that stuff right now. So let's jump in here. 210.52a, general provisions. All right, and this comes right out of the code book. Again, please follow along in that code book. So general provisions: in every kitchen, family room, dining room, living room, parlor, library, den, sunroom, bedroom, rec room, or similar room or area of the dwelling, receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with basically A1 through A4, which is going to be these code references here. So they really listed almost every room inside of a house except for, let's try to rule them out. We can say kitchens, we can say bathrooms, we can say unfinished basements, we can say garages. Basically the stuff that's not listed separately down here, right? That basically, this is a catch-all. So anytime in any of these rooms, we have to follow this stuff is basically what that's telling us. So let's jump in and actually see what number 1 tells us about spacing in these areas. Receptacles shall be installed so that no point measured horizontally along the floor line of any wall space is more than 6 feet from a receptacle. It's worded a little confusingly. So let's take a look at this. Basically what they want us to do is a door counts as like a break in the wall space. So let's start from a door. So let's measure from the door down to this corner. We're going to continue measuring around this corner till we get to the first receptacle. This space must be less than 6 feet. Same thing from this distance to this receptacle must be less than 6 feet. Now what about this here, right? They have, this is listed as 12 foot. I thought we said 6 foot. Well, think about this. The way they worded that is no wall space can be more than 6 foot from a receptacle. So here's a wall space. If I go 6 foot this way, I hit a receptacle. 6 foot that way, I hit a receptacle. Think about it like this. You got a floor lamp. It has a 6 foot cord on it. You need to be able to plug that in to one side or the other. So no wall space can be more than 6 foot. Another way to say that, your receptacles can be a maximum of 12 foot apart from one another. So again, we have sort of this 6 foot space from the wall break or the start of a wall to the first receptacle. Then we have 12 foot to the next receptacle, right? That's a big one. You're going to see that quite a lot. Remember that one. Next up, 210.52a2 is wall space. What do we consider wall space? Let's define it. So any wall space 2 foot or more in width has to be counted as wall space. Okay, period. If it's 2 foot or greater, you got to count it. So you must have a receptacle in that space. The space occupied by fixed panels and sliding doors is considered wall space. So your sliding door has a fixed panel and a sliding panel. The fixed panel counts as wall space. So you got to start measuring from that fixed panel. And then lastly, the space afforded by fixed room dividers such as freestanding bar type counters or railings. Railings is a big one. If you have sort of a railing that overlooks down into like a staircase, that should be considered as wall space. So how do you solve that? Well, you might have to actually get into floor receptacles, which coincidentally is our next one here, number 3. If we want to count a floor receptacle as a part of these minimum required wall receptacles, it must be within 18 inches of the wall. Okay. So we're going to skip these next couple and jump down here to 21052D bathrooms. They don't have a lot to say. They keep it pretty simple, but at least one shall be installed within 3 foot of the outside edge of each basin. Each basin, so you might have 2 sinks. You better have one within 3 feet of either one. It's got to be installed on a wall or partition that is adjacent to the basin or the countertop or cabinet just to the side of it. In no case shall the receptacle be located more than 12 inches below the top of the basin. Receptacle assembly listed for use in countertop shall be permitted to be installed in the countertop. So basically you need to have it near the sink within 3 feet. I want to talk about that installed in the countertop. We're not talking about a receptacle face up in the countertop. That's a listed assembly, usually some kind of a pop-up or a sealed assembly. We cannot have receptacles face up in a countertop. It's got to be a dedicated listed device for that use, for that purpose. So one receptacle within 3 feet of each basin in your bathroom. Outdoor outlets gets a few more little breakdowns here. We have to basically abide by 1, 2, and 3 below. So for a 1 and 2 family dwelling, you're going to tell us each unit of the 2 family dwelling that is at grade level, at least one receptacle shall be readily accessible and not more than 6.5 feet above grade. Okay, for a multi-family dwelling, for each dwelling unit, a multifamily where the dwelling unit is located at grade level and provided with individual exterior egress, at least one receptacle outlet readily accessible from grade and not more than 6.5. So again, pretty similar to your first one there. And then balconies, decks, and porches here, they're going to tell us that any time that they are attached to the dwelling unit and accessible from inside the dwelling unit shall have at least one receptacle outlet accessible from the balcony, deck, or porch. And again, we must be lower than 6.5 feet. Really, they just don't want anybody running extension cords through a window, through a door. If people are going to be out there using it, likely they're going to want to plug something in. Therefore, we have to have at least one outlet out there. All right, laundry area. Moving right along. So at least one receptacle shall be installed in areas designated for the installation of laundry equipment. We have a couple exceptions here. Before we do that, that receptacle they just mentioned is in addition to anything we need specifically for laundry equipment. And what I mean by that is basically an electric dryer. Obviously needs a specific plug, so we're not talking about that here. But exception 1, a receptacle for laundry equipment shall not be required in the dwelling unit of multifamily dwelling where laundry facilities are provided on premises. So we don't need one for each dwelling unit of a multifamily as long as there's a common area for laundry. Receptacle for laundry equipment shall not be required in other than one family dwellings where laundry facilities are not to be installed or permitted. So maybe we just don't have a laundry area. So again, in a multifamily dwelling, that is. So if that's the case, we don't have to do anything. Multifamily dwelling without a laundry area, we are allowed to do that. So down to basements, garages, and accessory buildings. For 1 and 2 family dwellings, at least one receptacle outlet shall be installed in these following areas. So 1, 2, and 3 here. So garages, in an attached garage and in each detached garage with power, at least one receptacle outlet shall be installed in each vehicle bay and not more than 5.5 feet above the floor. So basically, attached or detached, if there's power to it, it doesn't matter. We treat them the same. We need one receptacle in each vehicle bay. It could be a detached garage without power, in which case, again, you don't have to do anything. Accessory buildings, an outbuilding, essentially they just tell us we need to have an outlet. So think of a shed that you run power to. Got to put an outlet out there. Other than that, they don't get too specific. We just need to have a receptacle out there. Basements, in each separate unfinished portion of the basement. So if it's split up into different sections, we need to have at least one receptacle. And that might be in addition to, if your laundry area is down in the basement, you will need an additional receptacle in addition to that laundry area, right? Hallways, this one's kind of interesting. In a dwelling unit, hallways that are 10 foot or more in length shall have at least one receptacle. So basically, if your hallway is less than 10 feet, you don't need any. If your hallway is 10 feet, 11 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, you need one receptacle. Not one for every 10 feet, but as soon as you hit 10, you need minimum one. They never tell you that you need more than one, right? So last but not least here, foyers. This gets pretty complicated. I don't put a lot of emphasis on this because it just doesn't seem to be a one that comes up very often in the real world. But so a foyer, your entryway that's not part of a hallway and has an area greater than 60 square feet, shall have a receptacle located in each wall space that is 3 foot or more in width. Doorways, door side windows, and that extend to the floor, and similar openings shall not be considered. So essentially, if you got a foyer, if any wall space is 3 foot or more, put a receptacle in there, right? So that was a ton of stuff in about 11 or 12 minutes here, but again, hopefully you followed along in the code. The LMS, CMS actually had a lot of good video content for this lesson, so please be sure to watch that. They did a really nice job with that as well. And again, a lot of stuff, a lot of code related stuff, so read it carefully.